Hi all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. If you were aware of the Amber Alert issued out of the state of California for two little sisters, 3-year-old Araya and 2-year-old Alana Maldonado, then I'm happy to report that police announced they were found safe and they're being returned to their family, who has gone through absolute hell since they were taken. Not only because the precious little girls were gone, but because police believed their father took them and fled after killing their mother. And the family of the little girls didn't know how long they had been gone. Police in Kings County, California said they were called to a home on 4th Place in Hanford to conduct a welfare check on January 28th of 2025 after the family of the little girl's mother, 22-year-old Madeline Rose Cuevas, said they had been unable to reach her. When they arrived on scene, police said they were able to gain entry into Madeline's home with the help of her family members. And inside, they found Cuevas deceased from a gunshot wound, and her two precious little girls gone.
Family has identified the woman found dead inside a Hanford home as Madeline Rose Cuevas. Deputies say their suspected killer is Jonathan Maldonado Cruz, and he left the house around 1 in the morning with 2 toddlers. CBS 47's Jennifer Zucker joins us live now in Hanford. Jennifer, you've been working the story all day. What do we know so far?
Well, Catherine, deputies with the Kings County Sheriff's Office say the suspect is the father of the 2 girls that were taken from this home behind me here. Now, there was an Amber Alert issued, and they say he's considered armed and dangerous. At around 4 o'clock on Tuesday, deputies say they were dispatched to a home near 4th Place and Orchard Drive for a welfare check. That's where deputies found 22-year-old Madeline Rose Cuevas dead from a gunshot wound. The Kings County Sheriff's Office says Cuevas' daughters, 2-year-old Alana and 3-year-old Araya, were taken from the home by their father, 23-year-old Jonathan Alexis Maldonado Cruz, at around 1 in the morning. An Amber Alert has been issued for Maldonado Cruz, who left the home in a gray 2020 Hyundai Elantra with the California license plate 8LZD084. The sheriff's office describing Maldonado as 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighing 215 pounds, with black hair and eyes. Sergeant Andrew Mazza with the Kings County Sheriff's Office says this is the first homicide of 2025 for the Kings County Sheriff's Office, and the abduction is very uncommon for the area.
Our goal at the moment is the safe return and location of the children. Of course, we would like to arrest the suspect and bring an arrest and hopefully prosecution for the family. But right now, our main concern is locating and the children.
And deputies believe Maldonado Cruz may have fled to Mexico, and deputies say the FBI and Mexican authorities are trying to track him down. And anyone with information about where Maldonado Cruz is located, you are asked to contact the Kings County Sheriff's Office as soon as possible. And coming up on Eyewitness News at 5, we'll bring you more details on this investigation.
Police said they were able to track 23-year-old Jonathan Maldonado Cruz's movements with his little girls through both his cell phone and Madeline's cell phone that he took with him after taking her life. And when he crossed over into Mexico, police said they were able to work with police in Mexico, as well as Cruz's mother, who they say was instrumental in convincing Cruz to return to the border to turn his little girls over safely to the authorities.
More than 2 days after a South Valley mother's murder, her 2 children were found safe and their father is in custody. Kings County Sheriff's deputies say 23-year-old Jonathan Maldonado Cruz turned himself in at the Mexican border sometime between Wednesday night and this morning. He's accused of killing 22-year-old Madeline Rose Cuevas, who would have celebrated her 23rd birthday on Valentine's Day. Now, after days of agony and grief, Madeline's father has been reunited with his granddaughters.
Thank you, Lord. He answered my prayer. I prayed all last night, man.
Authorities believe Maldonado Cruz abducted those little girls after shooting and killing their mother Tuesday morning at their home near Hanford in the community of Home Garden.
Action News reporter Kate Nemerich joins us live in studio with what we've learned about the efforts to bring those little girls home and the moments the children's grandfather learned they were safe. Kate?
Warren, Margot, it has been an emotionally taxing week for Joel Cuevas. He learned his daughter was killed and granddaughters were missing for days. But today, he learned they were safe. This is the moment they stepped off the plane, touching back down in the South Valley after their father surrendered in Mexico. He follows in handcuffs just moments later. We spoke with Cuevas this morning, who allowed us to capture on camera the very moment he found out he would soon have his grandkids back. A grandfather plagued by days of grief and uncertainty after he learned his daughter was shot and killed and her former partner was the suspect and on the run with their 2 young children. Through the tragedy, Joel Cuevas finally received some good news. The missing toddlers were found safe after their father had taken them across the border to Mexico, and the girls were on their way home. Action News is blurring the children's faces now that they've been found because they are victims of a crime. This exclusive video from Action News shows the 2 young girls taken from their home in Kings County returning with sheriff's deputies Thursday afternoon. Despite what they've endured, law enforcement tells us the 2 small girls toting backpacks expressed excitement, yelling "airplane, airplane," and were in good spirits.
You know, you hope they just never remember a day like this.
The Kings County Sheriff's Office held a press conference as the girls were making their way to the South Valley. The sheriff says 23-year-old Jonathan Maldonado Cruz is accused of killing their mother, 22-year-old Madeline Rose Cuevas, at their home in Home Garden near Hanford on Tuesday around 1 a.m. and taking off with their 2 children. The young mother's body wasn't found until 4 Tuesday afternoon, giving Maldonado Cruz about a 15-hour head start on authorities. The FBI began tracking Maldonado Cruz's cell phone, finding that he had already crossed the border into Mexico. The sheriff also credits Maldonado Cruz's family in his surrender.
The suspect's mother was a critical part of these negotiations, and we thank her for this. I know that was probably not an easy thing for her to do.
For now, Joel Cuevas is grateful for the safe return of his granddaughters.
I can't bring my daughter back. You know, nothing could bring my daughter back, but I've come to terms with that already, and you know, she was part of bringing my kids back. I have a feeling, you know, for me to feel joy right now after feeling so much grief, that's her.
If you or a loved one are experiencing domestic violence, there's support available around the clock. The phone number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233. And if you live in Fresno County, you can call the Marjorie Mason Center at 559-233-4357. Maldonado Cruz has been booked into the Kings County Jail on charges including murder and kidnapping for ransom. The Cuevas family is still planning Madeline's funeral, and they've created a GoFundMe to help provide care for her daughters. You can find more information on that at abc30.com.
Now that Madeline Cuevas' precious babies are returning home safe, her family's left with the heartbreaking task of laying her to rest and somehow, some way, trying to explain to her babies, who have already gone through so much, that they no longer have their mother. May God give them the strength. I'll be praying for those precious babies who barely had time to get to know their mother before she was so viciously stolen from them by pure evil, their own father. Here's the press conference announcing that the girls were found safe and detailing every step of this tragic case. If the sound is low on parts of the press conference, I apologize. I couldn't get the sound any louder. May Madeline Cuevas rest in peace. Thank you so very much for watching. Stay safe out there. And here is the press conference.
Our victim in this case is Madeline Rose Cuevas, 22 years old. The 2 children that were involved this week were Aria and Alana, 3 years old and 2 years old. The suspect, Jonathan Maldonado Cruz. Today, I'm deeply sorry for the loss of Madeline, and I just want to say to the family, my condolences and prayers go out to you. It's such a tragedy that should never occur. 2 babies lost their mother, And we're learning through this investigation that she was just a beautiful person inside and out. How the case started. Madeline's father alerted us to that they had not been in contact with Madeline, and so about 4 p.m. On Tuesday, January 28th, we went to the residence that they had already made entry into and discovered that she was deceased inside the residence. The deputies arrived on scene and discovered her, and she had a gunshot wound to her body. And some of the things I'm not going to get into specifics today, so I'll leave it at gunshot wound. The detectives were called out and took over the investigation. In a short amount of time, detectives determined the homicide most likely took place on Monday night or early Tuesday morning, a little after midnight, about 1 a.m. Which meant that when you look at the time frame, the suspect had about a 15-hour head start on us. I want to repeat that because that's really important when you tie this back to some of the social media stuff going on. The suspect had about a 15-hour head start on us. Detectives learned real quickly that 2 children were possibly with the suspect, and some of the initial information indicated that he may have fled to Mexico. Our agency immediately enlisted the help of the FBI. They were able to begin coordinating with local and federal authorities in both the United States and Mexico with the sole purpose at this point of getting the children returned back safely. You know, in cases like this, you focus a lot on the suspect, but when there's children involved, the utmost important was getting those children back safely. The FBI began tracking both cell phones, and when I say both cell phones, I'll clarify, the suspect's cell phone and the victim's cell phone was also missing. And through that tracking, they determined that the suspect had gone south to Mexico and across the Mexican-American border. As detectives, the FBI and Mexican authorities began to close in on the suspect's whereabouts. Detectives were able to successfully negotiate the surrender of the suspect this morning and the safe return of the children to authorities at the border crossing of San Ysidro. The suspect's mother was a critical part of these negotiations, and we thank her for this. I know that was probably not an easy thing for her to do. This case was a 24-hour operation. Staff across the board that I mentioned worked tirelessly since this came to us on Tuesday afternoon. We thank the public for their understanding in this matter. We've had a lot of inquiries from the media, the public, and whether it be through social media posts. You know, the public wants to know immediately what's going on. We live in that era now with social media where everybody wants that instant knowledge, instant gratification, but we hold back a lot of information, and I hope the public understands that. You know, we always appreciate when the public helps us, but they got to understand we can't give out everything right off the bat. We've got to hold things back so we can do our job. There was an amazing amount of work being done behind the scenes, and I just would like to extend my appreciation to the Mexican authorities again, and especially we understand that one of the Mexican authorities unit member was injured in this effort. I don't know his condition, but we hope he's doing okay in recovery. This case is continuing and remains active. Our focus has been on getting these children home, and we still have a lot of follow-up to do and a lot of investigation to complete. But we had a big hurdle this morning by getting those kids home, and they're on their way back to Kings County as I speak, and we look forward to reuniting them with their family here. KCO detectives worked hard on this, but you always have other partners, and there's an unsung partner in this week that hardly ever gets a mention, and I just want to mention Kings County Child Protective Services. Early on in this, we reached out to them so we could start to coordinate this because we went into this thing with the attitude that we were going to get these kids home safe. But the unfortunate tragedy of this, you're going to have kids who no longer have a mother and their father's going to be in custody. So you have 2 children that are going to be deeply impacted by this, and a special thanks to Kings County Child Protective Services for being there at a moment's notice to go with us down south to make sure we get these kids home and that they're well cared for on the return back to Kings County. I'm not going to get into the evidence. I know you're going to have some questions today afterwards, but please understand, you know, the focus has to be on now going back and going through these interviews without tainting people by what they see or hear from me standing before you today. We're going to focus on a lot of different things, the interviews, the suspect's motive. You know, those are things we have some information on, but we just don't know details yet. We would ask the public that might have some of that information to please reach out to us, because now that the suspect's going to be in custody and the children are going to be reunited with family, we really want to do a top quality case for this so we can prepare it for the district attorney's office and get it to her office for review and hopefully in the long run prosecution for this horrific crime. So at this point, I'm going to stop there and turn it over to our district attorney, Sarah Hackert, and then we'll take some questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming here today. First and foremost, I want to reach out to the family of Madeline. What a terrible loss. And to have to go through the trauma of not only losing a loved one, but also experiencing the fear of losing possibly 2 children must have been extremely traumatic for them. And my heart goes out to them. I'm so happy that the law enforcement has been able to recover the children safely, and that they've been returned back to their family. With respect to this case, our office has received a copy of the file. The investigation is not complete, and so our review of the case is still under review. I expect that we will be making a filing decision in the next few days, but we still need to see further reports, and we don't have all of the information to make an adequate filing decision at this time. Thank you.
I have a question about the cell phone. Did the cell phone, was that being tracked to Mexico or a different location as well? Where exactly was the suspect and these children found?
So we do have tracking information on the cell phone. I'm not going to get into details where we tracked it to and where it went and everywhere, but yes, part of the cell phone data that led us to the location where we believe the suspect was hiding was in Mexico.
So he brought her cell phone with him?
He brought his cell phone and her cell phone.
And then the other question a lot of people are wondering about is the Amber Alert. People say they didn't get it until 11:30 the next morning. People really just care about these kids. They want to know, you know, that delay. Could they have been found before they were in a different country? Could they have been found here in Kings County?
It's a great question, and just to kind of put that to rest, when Amber Alerts go out, you have options, statewide options, regional options, etc. When the paper Amber Alert was sent out to the media and locally on our social media, we believed at that time that it was going to go out statewide. A few hours went by and it hadn't gone out yet. So then we started to inquire, like, hey, how come this hasn't gone out yet? Well, in the meantime, what we learned later was the pings on the cell phone were showing that it was already in Mexico. So you have to make quick decisions in these types of cases, and a decision was made, a tactical decision was made not to let it go out statewide yet, because what that does when you put that out statewide, it inundates our investigators with all these tips that are coming in now, because that's the nature of our community and communities also across the state. And so we held off and waited because we wanted to see if we could track the cell phone further. But once you get into another country, cell phone tracking becomes a bit of a challenge. And then as time elapsed, you start to worry that it's going to come back into the United States, and yet we haven't hit the button yet for the emergency alert to go out statewide or even into a specific region. So it was delayed because we were working on those things. And we have inside information that the public doesn't, the media doesn't. And so we're doing the best we can to try to monitor the situation and literally get that out when we can. So it was delayed going out to people's cell phones, because then we started to worry because the tracking became a little bit further and further between. You know, cell phones die if you don't have a cord, or they turn it off, or they discard it. And then we were like, hey, if this person comes back into the country, we lose that cell phone tracking, we need to get it out to the public. So that's why it was delayed in going out to the public, because we were gathering a lot of information at that time with our law enforcement partners. And so hopefully the public kind of understands that a little bit, that, you know, we would love for all of them to come work for us, but we got to do our thing. And the media as well. You know, we appreciate the push out of information that we initially push out, but sometimes these things are evolving, and you know, you always have some concerns of what the suspect knows, and you're playing kind of a cat and mouse game with the suspect on, hey, what do they know and what don't they know? Do they know where we're at? And And so, anyway, that's the reason for that. So thank you.
So did the initial mistake, that was with like technology or within?
So I'll say this, we thought that perhaps there was a mistake early on, but we learned through this process that there's two levels of an Amber Alert. One is that fact sheet that they send back to local agencies immediately that you can share locally. And one is you have to specifically tell them, hey, hit the statewide emergency alert button. And there was some discussion during that time frame whether or not that should go out. And so I'm not going to call it a mistake, because in this case we got two little girls back that are safe and happy and seem to be doing well. But it's a tactical move. And, you know, in hindsight, could we have put it out? We could have. Would it have worked? It might have. You know, the Monday morning quarterback in me sometimes thinks that, hey, maybe we could have, but I'm super pleased that it worked out the way it did as I stand here today. Thank you.
The suspect was, he crossed the country on his car. It was on Tijuana or was
It's a great question, and if you know that, we would love to know it. So we don't know that yet, and we're not going to get into those details as we do develop them, because we do want to interview people that might have the knowledge of that.
If you could just describe the state that the two little girls were found in. Were they scared? Were they hungry? Tell me.
Yeah, and so, you know, they're 3 years old and 2 years old. And, you know, being a parent and a grandparent, children at that age sometimes are pretty oblivious to what's going on around them. And that's how I'll describe it. They seem like they're doing well, they're clothed, they're fed, you know, they seem jovial to an extent, and so they seem like they're doing great, you know, and it's a horrible tragedy, and at some point in their lives, you know, you hope they just never remember a day like this. But all in all, they look like a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old that were getting ready to get on an airplane.
I know that this kind of two parts. We have the homicide investigation
Sure.
and this kidnapping. Back to the homicide investigation. Were there, just remind us, signs of any prior domestic violence or arrest or criminal history? I know this has kind of been discussed, but if you could tell us now if you've discovered anything in the meantime.
Yeah, and you know, I'll kind of repeat what I said earlier. We really want to be careful what we talk about the investigation at this point, because we want those interviews to be kind of clean and clear with people that are watching this today. We know a lot of people are going to watch, and so I'm going to leave that for now, you know, with all due respect, because I really don't want to start getting into any of those details where now somebody has a different mindset than what they had before we put this stuff out. So.
And can you tell us anything more about where in Mexico they were found? Was it close?
Tijuana.
Tijuana, okay.
Did the suspect turn himself in? You mentioned the word located. Did he turn himself in?
Yeah, and so what happened was the FBI, through their sources and all their partners, had started to narrow in. And when you're doing these tracking devices, it starts as kind of a broad range, and then they start to pinpoint it. And they had pinpointed a certain area, and this morning, as they were getting ready to gear back up and go to that area, the suspect's mother reached out to our detective that's working on this case and said he's ready to turn himself in. And so they made arrangements through the mother for the children to come across first with grandma, and then the suspect after that. And you know, they stuck to their word this morning, and I'll give them credit for that. You know, that's the best outcome we could have asked for. You know, I really felt good going into today because we were so close last night. And I feel like we would have got them, but you just never know when you're going into a neighborhood and you know, and perhaps a hostile neighborhood. You just don't know, and so I'm thankful that it worked out the way it did this morning.
So the suspect is on his way to here, or
Yes.
he's still in Mexico?
Yeah, the suspect and the children are on their way here as we speak. Yeah.
What are the next steps in this? I know charges are still being filed. Is that kind of something you could speak with about, you know, what kind of information you are using and kind of when we can get a timeline for those kind of updates?
Well, I would say that we have some of the reports, but we have not seen the whole picture. Obviously, as the sheriff just said, he's still conducting his investigation, so we're not going to get the full story until the investigation is complete or close to complete. But we will be making a final decision either tomorrow or Monday.
Do you have any idea of perhaps, like, will there be, you know, enhancements to homicide, any kind of other child endangerment? Is that kind of the stuff we might be looking at here?
I should not disclose exactly what we're looking at right now because we only have a limited amount of information, and once we get more information, that can change. What I can say is that we're taking this case very seriously. We have a deputy DA already assigned to the case who's working with the detectives, and once we get that information, we'll be making a filing decision.
And what about what's next for these girls? I know you had mentioned the Kings County Child Protective Services. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the way the process works for Child Protective Services, they have to go through a vetting process. And so, you know, I've been around a long time, and it used to be, literally a deputy on the street would just pick a family member and go, here you go, can you take care of these kids now? It just doesn't happen in our world anymore. And so what Child Protective Services did and does, and they started already to start to do some backgrounds on some family members, because they have to make sure that whoever they turn the children over to are fit and don't have criminal histories, aren't a 290 registrant, and there's a process that they go through to make sure it's going to be a good fit and reintroduce. And so sometimes that happens super quick, and that could be something that happens tonight, where they're like, okay, we vetted these people, because like I said, they've already been involved in our process this week, so they may already be way ahead of us on this. Sometimes kids do have to go into a temporary foster care for a day or two until they get the process vetted. And so, you know, it really just depends on how quick they're able to move forward. But that'll be the process next, is they'll make sure that they put these children with who they believe at this time is the best to care for them in the current situation.
You mentioned a 15-hour heads up that, you know, that has to be hard coming in after that amount of time. You know, could things have been a lot different if maybe members of the community might have said, hey, I heard something and called you? You know, is there any, you know, is there a message to the community there of like, I wish you had called sooner? I mean, I know we have half happy ending with these children, but I mean, that they went through some really, I'm sure, hard situation thinking about it.
You know, and just by virtue of distance, you know, most of us have traveled down to San Diego or even into Mexico, and we know that depending on traffic, it's, you know, 6 to 12 hours to get there. So either worst of traffic, he still gets there before we even have the first call on this. So it puts us at a little, you know, a little delay. We always want people, you know, it's the old saying now, see something, say something, you know, and if there were people out there that had some signs or something within that time frame or the day before, you know, they may feel guilty about it now. You know, I can't speak for them personally, but we would still want them to come forward and tell us about it, because, you know, it's important for that investigation now to get to the bottom of this and try to figure out, okay, the who, what, where, when, how, and why. You know, what can we do next? And then, you know, what can people learn from this and families learn from this? You know, it sure seems like there's some domestic violence type situations going on with this case specifically, and you know, it's something that you just hate to see. And so I just encourage people, you know, who have loved ones where you see people having a difficulty in a relationship, and I'm not sure that that's the case here, but if you do see that, you know, please intervene, you know, some form or fashion. You know, there's so many programs out there now, and 211 and all these different things that you can call to get some mental health help. You know, as we see those things, we sure hope people, you know, will come forward and try to intervene with their family members to make sure that they're safe, because it's just really important. And so, you know, it's difficult, but yeah, we want people to report things that they think are suspicious, whether it be to us, Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services, or even to local mental health services, just to have that intervention.
And you mentioned it was Madeline's father who had talked to her. How crucial was it that he did that?
Well, you know, it was very crucial, because had it gone on for another day or 2 days, who knows? You know, you just don't know where this has gone. You know, and I'll offer some just heartfelt, you know, condolences to him specifically, because he's obviously taken this really hard. And when staff talked to him earlier, you know, he was very emotional about it and super thankful. And I just, you know, I can't even imagine what the family's going through and what he's going through. You know, as the dad of a daughter, I'm just blown away by it. And you know, there's things in your career that last with you for a lifetime, and this will be one of those cases that lasts with me for a lifetime. And I just can't thank my staff enough for everything they did this week and you know, bringing it to this point. And now, you know, now the rest of the work starts, and if we get enough information, which I believe we will, to book this guy tonight and charge him. I hope he rots in hell. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Really appreciate it.